Okay, we are in middle of Perek Lamed Hey. On the top is page Mem Hey. At the bottom is 162. Okay, so what is Alter Rebbe saying over here? How does godliness rest on a person? Only when you become a vessel for godliness. And that's why he said love and fear of Hashem is not sufficient, because love means I love, I fear. There's still an I. In order to be the home, the vessel, the wick and the flame for godliness, you need to have complete humility. Realization that, like he said, the attribute of Chachma, Einay Mulvadei, Vein Zulase, Hu Levadi, Hu Vein Zulase, is only God. So he said, when you do it in thinking, learning, and davening, so then you're bringing it down into the garments of speech, thought and speech. But you're not bringing it down into the action part of the body. You're not bringing it into the physical, body. You're bringing it into your thought and speech. It's more of a spiritual realm, relatively speaking. So that's what Alter Rebbe was explaining. The last thing we were learning, that you need mitzvahs, physical mitzvahs, and that's why, and that affects the body even more. So we're going to start like midway in the page. Memhe on the top, 162 at the bottom. And he says like this, because without the body doing the mitzvah, without the animal soul, which actually gives life and existence to the person would not be able to function. Let me explain this. Unless if you're a tzaddik that killed your Yetzer Hara, we all live from our animal soul. The life that happened in the body on a day-to-day basis is from our Yetzer Hara, from the animal soul that gives life to the body. When a person does a mitzvah, at the moment they do the mitzvah and eternally afterwards, that moment they're getting their nourishment from godliness. Like for instance, Alter Rebbe said before, when the hand gives tzedakah, okay, take a dollar, penny, nickel, whatever, you put it into the pushka. Right now, where is that hand living from? It's living from the godly soul, because now you're doing the mitzvah. But Alter Rebbe is saying now, but the fact is you needed the animal soul, which gives life to the body, to be able to move the hand to give the tzedakah. So therefore the animal soul is being elevated. Because it's not the godly soul doing the mitzvah, we live from the animal soul. The animal soul that physically gives us life. So he says, Shabalade, without the animal soul, without the animal soul that makes us alive, the godly soul can't do anything in the body. Because the godly soul is spiritual, it's a part of God. And the body is completely physical and mundane. Therefore, what is the intermediary between the godly soul and the body? In nefesh achiyunis habamis is the soul, the animal soul that gives life. Therefore, it's called nefesh achiyunis because it gives life. Hamlubeshes bedam ha'adam shebalibai, that dresses itself, as he spoke before in the first parak of Tanya. It dresses itself into the blood of the person and in the body. And he says, even though the essence of the nefesh habamis, the essence, which are its bad midas, when you still do a mitzvah, okay, it's very simple. I'm going to use an example. I give tzedakah, okay? It's the easiest example to give. When I give tzedakah, my animal soul is making that hand alive and giving tzedakah. But because I'm doing a mitzvah, simultaneously, my hand is getting life from the godly, from godliness, from my godly soul and from godliness. And when I do the mitzvah, I didn't transform my animal soul to Kedusha. It's still an animal soul. Nevertheless, Dr. Rebbe says an interesting thing. Because the fact that you forced, now when you gave tzedakah, you forced the animal soul to do a mitzvah, and against the nefesh habamis's will, it's doing a mitzvah because your mind allowed the good to overcome the bad. And they agree to it. And they also they want mitzvah to do the mitzvah. Because bottom line is, when I give tzedakah, yeah, my godly soul is getting me to do the mitzvah. But who's doing it? The animal soul. So yeah, did the animal soul become Kedusha? No. Nefesh HaChiyunis and Nefesh HaBamis is exact same thing. Nefesh HaBamis, Dr. Rebbe says clearly here, Nefesh HaBamis HaChiyunis. The Nefesh HaBamis is the animal soul that gives life, unless you're a tzaddik. You know, Tanya that killed the Yitzhar. So the Nefesh HaBamis, the Nefesh HaChiyunis, when it does a mitzvah, is not being transformed to Kedusha. When you're done with the mitzvah, Nefesh HaBamis is back to normal. But the fact that the Nefesh HaBamis agreed to do the mitzvah, even against his will, by the way, and he says, they want to do the mitzvah. How do they want to do the mitzvah? Because the godly soul, which is in the head, became victorious, that controls the heart. The hein b'shazu, now the Rebbe says like this, therefore, at the time a person does a mitzvah, the animal soul is going to sleep and is in Golus. Can you believe it? When a Jew, in other words, let me explain like this. The Alter Rebbe said before in Tanya, when he was speaking about the Beinani, the only way a person could be a Beinani, meaning a person who still has a powerful animal soul, very powerful Yetzer Hara, but he doesn't sin, not in thought, not in speech, and not in action. There's only one way that could happen. Because the mind, and now the Rebbe says, a person is born, b'teva toldase, in his natural born, he's naturally born a human being. Every human being, by the way, is born with the ability for the mind to control the heart. We all know that if there's something very tempting, but it's forbidden, either morally forbidden or halachically forbidden, or something very tempting, you have it. I'm not going to go steal it, but I want it. Why am I not going to go steal it? Because my mind says to me, it's wrong and you're not doing it. The animal soul, the lust and temptation, wants to do it. The head, the mind, controls the heart and says no. So what is this within the Jew? The godly soul is in the head. The animal soul is in the heart. That the Alter Rebbe said in the first parak of Tanya. So now when something comes up, there becomes a battle between the animal soul wants to sin and the godly soul doesn't. How could it, and this is the Beinani. What does a Beinani do? He has a strong temptation to sin. But his mind, knowing that it's wrong, disconnecting from Hashem, or not connecting to Hashem if it's a positive mitzvah, he understands that it's not right to do. And therefore I control myself. What happens when a person controls themselves? The Nefesh HaBamis is like goes to sleep. It has no control anymore. The second you finish the deed, it wakes up again. So the Alter Rebbe says that why do we need mitzvahs? He's going into this point of explaining why we need to create the fuel to keep the Shekhinah, the fire of the Shekhinah, divine presence on her head. And he said, because a flame needs fuel. What is the fuel? Not love and fear, because that's not a vessel. That's still you. I love, I fear. It has to be complete nullification, which is the concept of mitzvahs. Now, you have it in thought and speech mitzvahs, which are fine, but it doesn't affect the low, coarse, mundane, lower parts of the body, the action parts of the person. So what happens when a person does a mitzvah? The mind controlled at that moment the heart to say, no, you can't do it, and I'm not doing it. And the mind overcomes the temptation, and then the Nefesh Habahamis goes to sleep. It's an exile. Because who's controlling it right now? Right now, the godly soul is controlling it. Therefore, when a person does a mitzvah, now the Rebbe is trying to bringing out, we're trying to understand it. Now the Rebbe is bringing out that mitzvahs are the fuel to keep the Shekhinah on the head, the divine presence here. Or to use other languages that we're learning in the Siddur in different classes, food keeps the soul in the body. Why do we need to eat? Because you don't eat for an extended period of time, the soul leaves the body. You die, God forbid. You need the soul to be in the body. Now, what keeps the soul in the body? Food. Okay, then you get more blood, you get more flesh. Then, physical neshama is. Yeah, but the spiritual neshama, yeah, true. The neshama is spiritual and the body is physical. But Hashem put the neshama into the body. So now that Hashem is putting the spiritual neshama into the body, now in order for the body to keep that spiritual neshama there, Hashem set it up, obviously, that we have to eat. And the food keeps the neshama in the body. As we know, God forbid you don't eat for a week, so you're going to die. So the same thing he says, what's food of Hashem? Mitzvahs, now that Rebbe is explaining here and all over Chassidus, mitzvahs, that we say, karbani lachmi liishai. He said every day in davening, in karbanos. The karbanos were God's bread. Mitzvahs are God's bread. What do you mean God's bread? Hashem in the world is like a neshama in the body. And the Medrash says, just like the neshama permeates the body, God permeates the world. Now, from the neshama, we understand that in order to keep the soul in the body, we need to eat. To keep God kaviyachol in the world, he needs to eat, so to speak. Now, what's the food that keeps Hashem in the world? When we do mitzvahs. Why only when we do mitzvahs? Because that nullifies us completely. I don't do what I want. I do what Hashem wants. There's no me. When you do a mitzvah, there's no me. It's what Hashem wants, not what I want. So therefore, the Alter Rebbe is saying, when a person does a mitzvah, that is the fuel that keeps the Shekhinah on the head. But you got an animal soul there. But he said, when you do a mitzvah, the animal soul goes to sleep. Because the animal soul agreed, whether he liked to or not, to allow the Jew to do the mitzvah. So when the Jew does a mitzvah, that's the food that keeps Hashem in the thing. And therefore he says, look, 6 lines in the end of the page. Ein zu mania. That's not something withholding. Hashras hashchina al gufa adam b'shazu. Therefore, the godly presence can rest on the person's head when he does a mitzvah. The hainu, which means shekoyach nefesh hachiyunis, the power of the animal soul. That's helping the Jew do the mitzvah. You're giving tzedakah with your physical hand, which is existing and moving because of the animal soul. That animal soul itself becomes included be'er Hashem in the revelation of Hashem, becomes absorbed in godliness. U'meyuchad by beyichud gamur, and it becomes completely united with Hashem. Why? Because the body and the animal soul are not doing what it wants to do. It's doing what Hashem wants it to do. By Deizem, therefore, Mamshich ha'adas l'cholos nefesh ha'chiyunis sheb'chol haguf. So therefore, he brings down godliness on the animal soul that's all over the body. Not only on the animal soul itself, the gam al guf gashmi, even the physical body is the vessel for this level of godliness. Makif momaila meirei shivad ragla. And therefore, it's surrounding, encompassing the person from head to toe, from head to foot. And that's what it says. That the Shekhinah rests on his head, meaning on the head. Meaning, what does it mean? We're not changing, we're not transforming the body. We're not transforming the animal soul. And like you said, right after the mitzvah, when you do the mitzvah, right afterwards, the nefesh habamis wakes up. So it doesn't transform the nefesh habamis. It remains encompassing, superficially affecting the nefesh habamis, that it got to do a mitzvah even though it didn't want to. The same thing when the Gemara says, "Akol be'asara." Anytime there's 10 Jews together, no matter what they're doing, the Gemara says, "Shchinta sharia," the Shechina rests. So now the Alter Rebbe asks a very interesting question with a wonderful answer. He says, "V'hine kol bechinas hamshachas, hashchina." All these drawing down of the level called Shechina. She bechinas gili erin tzav baruch hu, which is called the revelation of God. Eina nikra shinui chas v'sholem, is not called God changing. V'lei riboy are not anything of pluralism. Alter Rebbe is adding a very simple. He's asking you pretty clearly. Alter Rebbe is asking, if I do a mitzvah, God rests on me. If I don't do a mitzvah, God doesn't rest on me. That means God's changing. He is on me, he's not on me. 1 minute he is, 1 minute he's not. Then he goes to somebody else, it comes back to me. Why isn't that ups and downs of Hashem resting on me when I do a mitzvah, leaving me when I do a sin? Why doesn't that cause a change in Hashem? So he says it, Taka doesn't. Why? Sanhedrin is a very interesting Gemara in Sanhedrin. The the certain heretic, Apicaitus, a non-believer, said to the famous Ram Gamliel, yes, like this, Amri, so you guys say that call Be'asara Shchinta Sharia. Every group of 10 people, the divine presence is resting. Right? That's what the Gemara said. We just said that the Gemara. He says in the Gemara, whenever there's a group of 10 Jews together, doing nothing, they're not learning, they're not davening, there's 10 Jews sitting and they're not killing each other, the Shekhinah rests. To the extent, it says in Chassidus that if an angel would come into the group of 10 people sitting doing nothing, it would explode from the Kedusha of 10 people, just 10 people in a room. Obviously, if they're sinning, they're pushing away the Shekhinah. We're talking just a group of 10 people. So this heretic, this Apicaitus, said to them, Gamliel, 1 minute. Here's a group of people, 10, God is present. There's another group of 10, God is present. The next country, God is present. So he said, how many gods do you have? He said to them, Gamliel, Amrisi, you say, Kol be'asara shchinta sharia, and every group of 10 people, the Shekhinah rests. So he says, Kama shchintas luchu. How many Shekhinahs do you have? Hey, there's 1 million groups of 10. That means Hashem has 1 million gods coming into different places. It's a very, very interesting logical question. But the Hey Shivlai, and Rabbi Gamliel answered with a very simple analogy. He says, Mashal me'er hashemesh. The analogy is some sunlight. Hanichnis b'chalenis rabim. That come through many different windows. Now, Rabbi Gamliel answered him as follows, and Al Rebbe is using that in our case. You have a sun shining in the sky. If you close your curtains, you're not getting any sunlight in. You open the curtain a little bit, you get a little sunlight. You open the curtain all the way, you get a lot of sunlight. Does that mean there's a lot of suns? No. There's one sun. Where you let him in, he's there. Where you don't let him in, he's not there. But the sun itself is not changing whether your curtains are closed or open. The sun is not changing. The sun is shining. Okay? Where and when you let him in, you're allowing the sun to come in. That's a remarkable answer that Rabbi Gamliel gave him. So the Alter Rebbe says the same thing over here. When a Jew does a mitzvah, in other words, like this, let's put it very simply. God's all over. God's all over. Somebody once asked the great tzaddik when he was a little kid, where's God? And he answered him, wherever you let him in. Obviously, God's all over. What does it mean? God is wherever you let him in. Hashem is shining. The sun is shining. God is shining. What does holiness mean? Like we said, not a place where God is, because God's all over. What's the difference between something holy and something unholy? Is just if godliness is revealed, it's holy. If godliness is not revealed, it's not holy. In order for godliness to be holy, you have to be a vessel. You have to open up the shades. You're not going to make a vessel, you're going to close your shades, then you're not having godliness. You do a mitzvah, the object becomes holy. Your hand becomes holy because your hand that is doing a mitzvah that Hashem wants us to do, that hand is now opening the curtain to allow Hashem to come in. You don't do a mitzvah, or especially, God forbid, if you do an Avera, then you're shuttering that. Not only you're putting shutters on the house, you're making it even darker. So it's up to us. So here the Alter Rebbe is explaining. Now he finished with this concept of with the Yenuka of the Zohar said, be careful, don't lock oil on your head, right? You need to put oil, shemen al rosh chol yachsar. Okay, don't miss any oil. So what does that mean? He explains, the God's presence is revealing. We need to let him in. We need to feed him. We need to give him oil for the fuel. The flame needs fuel. The flame needs food, basically. We are the ones feeding the food. And that's only the Alter Rebbe is explaining of by doing a practical mitzvah. Because when I do a practical mitzvah, that's total humility, total nullification, that I'm not doing what I want, I'm doing what God wants. And therefore, if you think about it, it doesn't really matter which mitzvah you're doing. It doesn't matter. Like it says in Pirkei Avos, don't weigh mitzvahs to say one's more important or one's less important. The concept of a mitzvah is doing what Hashem wants me to do. When I do what Hashem wants me to do, that is my part of the body, whether it's my mouth, my head, my hands, my feet, my stomach, whatever it is. That part of me that's doing what Hashem wants me to do. And I'm doing it because my mind says, even though your heart desires differently, but this is what you need to do because you're a human, not an animal. We're not animals that go by whatever they want, they do. We are humans that are disciplined. If it's not mine, I don't steal it just because I want it. Or if it's immoral, I don't do it. Or if it's forbidden by Torah, I don't do it. The mind then controls the animal soul to agree to do what Hashem wants it to do. And that is the fuel. that any mitzvah that we do, it doesn't matter what it is, any mitzvah Jew does, more important, less important, harder, easier, it doesn't matter. But, so why do we need to do so many mitzvahs? Why didn't Hashem give us 10 mitzvahs, 10 commandments and finish? Why do we have 248 positive mitzvahs? Because again, explaining this concept, this is where it makes sense. Why do we have 248 limbs in our body? There's 248 limbs in a male's body. Female's 252. It's argument 252. But a male has 248. Why? What? Every limb, every organ has a different function that no other limb has. That's why we have 248 different limbs. Every limb has a different function than all the other limbs. And therefore, the nourishment that comes from the heart and the brain to every particular limb is for that particular limb on that limb's level. If you want to see, it has to go through the eye. You don't see with your mouth. You want to talk, well, looks can kill, but you want to talk, you have to use your mouth. You want to write, you have to use your hands. That's the way the neshama comes in. For whatever reason it is, there's 248 different mitzvahs, meaning different mitzvahs that bring down and reveal a different level of godliness. That's why God gave us 248. From them, by the way, there's not that many that exist today. A lot of them have to do with the sacrifices, purity and impurity of the temple, things like that. But the mitzvahs that we have today, each mitzvah brings down a unique revelation of godliness. And therefore, the Arizal writes that the neshama has to keep coming down again, again, and again, and again, until it keeps all mitzvahs and learns all aspects of Torah. Why? Because the neshama needs to become complete. And that revelation of godliness that the mitzvah I didn't do, my neshama is lacking that, and it needs to get it. And therefore, that's how it works. So that level, I need 248 positive mitzvah. Each mitzvah doesn't do. Somebody asked the question, what's the significance in 10 people in the presence of Hashem? Because the Gemara learns out a congregation is 10 people. In fact, we learn out from the spies. The 10 spies were called Ada community. When there's a community, there's 10 people are not 10 individuals. Once you have 10, it becomes a new entity called a community, a tzibur. And then it's not individuals anymore. It elevates to a different status completely. That status is what the vessel of godliness is. Anyway, everybody have a good weekend. Shabbos, Mitzvah Monday night, 8:30 Parsha. And everybody have a great week.